At number 10 is the time when the Flash joins evil Superman in the Injustice storyline. When Superman goes evil and splits up the Justice League in the pursuit of world domination, the Flash actually joins him, and it takes a while for him to realize that he's made an error in judgment. Superman even kills Shazam at one point, and this still doesn't change the Flash's mind about the intentions of their mutiny. Now, the idea of the Flash turning evil seems like a really bad moment, and you might be thinking it deserves a higher spot on the list, but considering this event subverts the moral standpoints of multiple characters at once, it doesn't quite have the same impact as if, let's say, the Flash turned bad on his own. I see the Injustice event as being its own standalone case that shouldn't really reflect too seriously on the Flash's overall track record. I mean, Superman changes first. It's hard not to follow in the footsteps of the most powerful superhero on Earth. At number 9 is the time that the Flash is forced to fight his partner and childhood best friend, August Hart, aka Godspeed. Godspeed is a villain who kills speedsters, and for a long time, Barry Allen doesn't realize that someone so close to him is behind the mask. Godspeed's motivations start relatively understandably with him searching for revenge against the man who kills his brother. But as it typically goes with bad guys, August goes a bit off the rails and takes on the philosophy that killing is the answer to stopping evil. When Barry finally realizes the true identity of Godspeed, he has no other choice but to fight him, marking one of the sadder moments in the history of the Flash. Luckily, however, Godspeed eventually reforms himself and teams up with Barry to fight Paradox in a high-stakes battle. Still though, this is a pretty rough moment for the Flash, all things considered. At number 8 is the time when the Flash turns inertia into a sentient statue. At one point, Bart Allen, Barry Allen's grandson, ages to a full adulthood and drops the mantle of Kid Flash, taking on the role of Scarlet Speedster and then eventually the Flash himself. But his time as the Flash is short-lived when the Rogues and Inertia team up to kill him. When Wally West takes back the mantle, he immediately hunts down Inertia. And then when he learns that the teen villain isn't even remotely sorry for what he's done, Wally West freezes him, turning him into a statue. But this doesn't kill him either, which I can't tell if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because he still has all his senses and he's totally conscious. Wally puts Inertia into the Flash Museum, leaving him there for years to come, forcing him to watch visitors pass by and observe him as though he's some old dusty relic in a museum. This is a pretty brutal punishment, putting into question whether or not it's even worse than just killing the guy. Although it honestly feels pretty deserved, we can't help but think there was maybe another way to handle this one. At number 7 is the time when the Flash forces Zoom to relive his worst memory over and over again. This is the result of Zoom attacking Wally West's wife Linda and hitting her with a sonic boom that kills her unborn child. Now you can imagine at this point the Flash's whole moral compass would come into question. The whole superhero code of no killing becomes more of a roadblock than ever here, so Wally decides to take a workaround. When he finally catches Zoom, he freezes the pesky villain in a single moment in time, forcing Zoom to watch the worst day of his life on repeat for the rest of eternity. Now, I don't know what happens when we die, but if it's anything other than being forced to relive your worst memory over and over again, I'd imagine Zoom was wishing that Wally had just broken that old superhero code just this once. At number 6 is the time when the Flash dies during the Crisis on Infinite Earths storyline. In a moment of sacrifice, Barry Allen uses his powers to dismantle the Anti-Monitor's antimatter cannon, but in doing so, he essentially runs himself into a skeleton, moving so fast that he dissolves before everyone's eyes. But it works, leaving the Anti-Monitor with no other options in that moment, and when he thinks he'd otherwise won the day and defeated the heroes of planet Earth. Although this is a very sad and awful moment for the Flash, it's also one of his best moments as well, in a way. It shows everyone how far Barry Allen would go to save his fellow teammates and the people of the world, which kind of evens out how devastating his death is. If he died any other way more tragically, this would be at number 1. But the context of his sacrifice sort of lightens the blow on this one for me. At number 5 is the seminal moment of Barry Allen's mother's death. Cited as a pivotal moment in the Flash's origin story, the death of Nora Thompson, Barry's mother, marks one of the worst moments in the Flash's history by a long shot. And to make things worse, Barry Allen's own father is framed for the crime, which leaves the future hero orphaned during most of his childhood. Later in the Flash storyline, it's revealed that the murderer had actually been Reverse Flash and not his father, which only makes the whole event that much more confusing and devastating. The only reason why this moment isn't higher on the list is that it's arguably one of the reasons why the Flash becomes as powerful and influential as he does. Humanity gets a lot of good out of this event in a strange, twisted sort of way, so I just pushed it a bit back on the list. At number 4 is the time that the Flash mind wipes the entire world. When he realizes that he'd be much safer if no one knew his secret identity, he decides that he should go back on his previous decision to reveal who he is to the world. So he approaches Hal Jordan and asks to wipe the minds of, well, everyone on Earth. It's such a powerful mind wipe that even he forgets that he was ever the Flash in the first place, for a time. But all in all, in the comic book world, it is pretty frowned upon to wipe people's memories for obvious reasons, so this makes it higher on the list. It's not quite as bad since he targeted only the memories regarding him as the Flash, but still, it's not one of the most respectable moves by the speedster. At number 3 is the time when the Flash drives the Top insane. During the Identity Crisis event, the infamous villain The Top, worst name, is the subject of an experiment. Barry Allen wants to see if he can mind wipe the bad out of this bad guy. He gets Zatanna to mind wipe him, leaving him kind of like a good guy after the procedure. But soon after, the now good guy, The Top, starts to remember his past evil deeds and basically goes insane. His guilt surmounts to a point where he pretty much ends his own life. This is another instance of the Flash playing around with mind wiping without considering the consequences, but it's not entirely his fault in my opinion. He was just trying to give The Top a chance of being better. At number 2 is the death of Iris. The longtime love interest of the Flash, Iris West Allen, has been around throughout the many different iterations of the Flash, and even though they have a pretty rocky relationship at times, Iris's death comes as a shock to not only the readers but to the Flash as well. And you best believe that it's once again at the hands of Reverse Flash. Literally at his hands. He pushes his hands into Iris's forehead and basically scrambles her brains, killing her instantly. This leaves Barry Allen in shambles naturally, and although we do see Iris make a return later on in the comics, this event is hugely pivotal for the Flash, changing him forever and strengthening his hatred for Reverse Flash in the process. At number 1 is the one and only FLASHPOINT. Not only is this one of the most significant events in the Flash's life, but it's also considered one of the worst things to happen to the whole DC universe. After he's brought back to life in Final Crisis, the Flash decides he needs to go back in time to prevent the death of his mother. But once again, we see Barry Allen lacking foresight with the consequences of not mind wipe this time, but time travel. And when he returns to the present, the whole world has changed. Most of the world is destroyed due to a war between Wonder Woman and Aquaman. Superman is now a secret government prisoner, and Batman is dead instead of his father, leaving Thomas Wayne as a murderous version of Batman. The Flash then has to go back in time and undo the events of Flashpoint, which sparks the beginning of the New 52, but some time there, the Flash instigates one of the most damaging events in the Flash's and all of the DC Comics history.
In at 10, Jason Todd. Jason Todd died by voters calling in to decide whether he would live or die, and his death was tragic for many reasons. Not only did most deem the vote unfair and cynical, but felt like was a little too dark. However, for many, Jason had never been more interesting than he was right before he died, and it was his death that caused an increased sense of actually having a good character that eventually made him popular enough to come back. Jason would most likely not be as loved as he is today if he hadn't have died, because his death is like one of the biggest moments in DC history, and outside of that, it made him the character he is today. The iconic images of Batman holding his impressively intact corpse are one that have gone down in comic history, and he was also seemingly the first person to stay dead in comics and really set the stage for actual stakes now that characters wouldn't come back. He eventually did, but it was still an emotional death to read and something that I would hate to go through. And at 9, Shazam's admission. During a crossover between DC's beloved Batman and Shazam, Billy ends up trying to help Batman stop Scarecrow, but does something reckless in the process, resulting in Batman reaming him out for it, saying, quote, "Scarecrow is one of the most dangerous people on the planet. If he'd released that toxin into the airstream, all of Gotham would have been," but gets cut off by Billy in one of the most tear-jerking admissions in comics. Quote, "I know. Shazam! I'm sorry, okay? I'm just a kid. I don't know what to do. I never know what to do. I have all this power and most of the time I'm just messing up or punching crocodiles or something. I feel like I'm wasting it. Like I was never supposed to have it, but I don't know. I do have it. So I just want to help. I need to help." Honestly, it was a very emotional scene. I don't know if Batman knew about Billy being a kid before this or not, but you can just sense how guilty Billy feels about everything. He's just a kid that wants to help. And at 8, Flashpoint's ending. Flashpoint, a timeline of Barry Allen's own creation where his mother doesn't die and he thus doesn't become the Flash. Oh, and don't forget the fact that Aquaman and Wonder Woman are at war. And at the very least in the animated movie, this resulted in them destroying the world, literally destroying the planet. Barry has to run back in time to stop himself from saving his mother, letting her die just so that he can save the planet. But in this case, Flash literally outruns the destruction of a planet and does so in order to let his mom die. Like, holy crap, that's insane. Like, I don't know if I'd have the actual strength to do that. So to me, it's pretty ridiculous that Barry first, while in emotional turmoil, is able to outrun the destruction of the world, that's fast, and then has to sacrifice his mother. Both emotionally and physically surviving this is damn impressive. Like, he should have either exploded with the rest of the world or not have been strong enough to sacrifice his mother. I wouldn't have been able to do it. Either way, she dies, right? So like, my thought is like, at least keep your dad out of prison and give him like another decade or so, right? Damn, that was painful. And at 7, the death of Barry Allen. After being put on trial for killing Professor Zoom, Barry Allen retires and joins Iris in the 30th century. After only a few weeks of happiness though, the crisis on Infinite Earths intervenes, and Allen is captured by the Anti-Monitor and brought to 1985. According to the Anti-Monitor, the Flash was the only being capable of traveling to other universes at will, so he had to capture him so that he couldn't be free. Allen escapes and foils the Anti-Monitor's plan though to destroy the Earth with an antimatter cannon, creating a speed vortex to draw the power in, but he dies in the process as the power becomes too much for his body. It has been said that Allen travels back through time and becomes the very same lightning bolt that gave him his powers, but later it was also strongly implied that the soul of Barry Allen resides in the Speed Force, the mystical source of Valhalla open to all dead speedsters, and the place from which the living ones draw their powers. After Allen's death, Kid Flash Wally West, his nephew and sidekick, ends up taking up the mantle of the Flash. A heartbreaking moment for any longtime fans of Barry Allen who now had to accept a new character in the role. And at 6, Catwoman and Helena. With the 82 issue run that is the 2002 to 2008 Catwoman monthly series, Selina Kyle was dragged through the mud. After killing Black Mask in cold blood, after discovering that Zatanna had mind wiped her in order to set her on the right path, Selina wound up with a baby when DC's titles jumped forward 1 year in time following Infinite Crisis. She had given up on the Catwoman mantle and decided to go legit when her secret identity is revealed, and Selina realizes that it would be impossible to raise a daughter in that environment. Enlisting the aid of Batman, she fakes the deaths of herself and the baby and places the child up for adoption. The real gut-wrencher comes when she turns to Zatanna and begs her to mind wipe her again to erase all the memories of her daughter, to which Zatanna refuses. Selina is one of the most grounded, independently sufficient characters in modern comics, and to see her break down like that was absolutely brutal. Having to give up a child is never easy. Halfway through into number 5, Ripped Letter. During the events of Flashpoint, both in the comics and in the animated movie The Flashpoint Paradox, Barry brings back a little souvenir for Batman. But instead of a "I survived my trip to a different timeline" t-shirt, it's actually a letter from Bruce's father, who was alive in the Flashpoint timeline. It's the only contact that Batman has ever had with one of his parents since they died. It would be a shame if something happened to it. Oh wait, that's right, Thawne decides to rip it to shreds so that it couldn't even be reassembled. It also didn't help that Thomas was the reason Thawne was killed in the Flashpoint timeline, so yeah, this was certainly a way to get back at Thomas, even though he was dead this time around. But I mean, like, who cares? It was super unnecessary, for Reverse Flash to do this, but it was still quite an emotional moment for both Bruce and the readers, which is also confusing since in the Dark Multiverse story, Reverse Flash actually saves both Bruce Wayne and his parents in order for there to be no Batman to oppose him in Reverse Flash's perfect universe. But this seems like another good way to stick it to Batman, who can never really be happy. And at 4, Clark says goodbye. As if the cover alone wasn't a dead giveaway that All-Star Superman number 6 would hold some truly teary-eyed scenes, Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely bombarded readers with emotion through one of the most potent stories in Superman's history. The last few pages of the issue sees a younger Clark speaking at Jonathan Kent's funeral, where he is witnessed unknowingly by his future self. The teardrops come once Ma and Clark are back on the farm, and young Clark is questioning the point of his powers if he couldn't save his dad. Of all the times that Jonathan Kent has died in the comics, or even in film for that matter, All-Star Superman number 7 nails it right on the head in terms of genuine emotion. Morrison serves us the best incarnation of the Man of Steel, unrelentingly human. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Ralph finds Sue's body. I think that in general, Identity Crisis number 1 may be the saddest DC comic ever. There is not one moment of joy within these pages, but when Ralph Dibny, the elongated man, found his wife and soulmate Sue Dearborn dead in their home, burnt to a crisp, you're a soulless bastard if you didn't wipe a tear from your eye. Firstly, seeing Ralph's rubbery mouth drop open because he's too emotional to literally keep himself together while kneeling desperately in the rain clutching Sue's body is a great image of itself, but ow. And then right next to that panel there's a close-up of a positive pregnancy test and a note that says "Daddy, 2 lines equals positive." That's cruel. Identity Crisis is definitely the saddest comic event ever, but this moment takes the cake for the most depressing moment in the history of all the Crisis events. As a person who loves love and thinks that it's one of the best things in the world when you have it, this is literally my worst fear. I would have hated to be in Ralph's shoes in these moments. Like, I can get behind like stretching myself at will, that seems like it would be fun, but having to deal with this, no. No thank you. Penultimately, in at number 2, Aqua Baby. In quite possibly the most messed up death in DC Comics history, we meet Arthur Curry Jr., aka Aqua Baby. Trust me, I wish I was kidding. Up until 1977, the notion of straight up killing anyone off for real in comics was a rare notion. But Adventure Comics number 452 changed that idea entirely. Black Manta kidnaps Aqua Baby and places him in a chamber that slowly fills with air, suffocating him slowly over time. Because you know he's Aqua Baby, not a normal baby, so instead of water it fills with air, yeah. Manta forces Aquaman and Aqualad to fight each other to save Junior's life, but by the time they're done, it's too late. When the fight ends, Aquaman's son is dead, Aquaman and Aqualad's relationship is ruined, and Mira now mourns her infant son. This event actually ends up leading to the divorce of Aquaman and Mira, which given who played her in the Aquaman movies, I feel like he dodged a bullet there. But again, like I said, love. And the love you have for your own child is incredible unless you're a monster. So being unable to save your son would be an absolute atrocity in my mind. Like I wouldn't be able to deal with that. That's no. And finally, into number 1, Blackest Night. With Jeff Johns at the helm, the lore of the Green Lantern Corps in 2000 grew exponentially, introducing the emotional spectrum of light and 6 other Lantern Corps that were established across the universe. All of this was in preparation for one of the most emotionally charged events in the DC Universe's history, Blackest Night. Without going too deep into things, a creature called Necron reanimates the dead, humans and superheroes alike, and tries to eliminate all life from the universe. It's creepy, right? But here's where it gets really messed up. Any character that was brought back to life is also subject to Necron's control. To give you an idea, Superman, Green Arrow, Wonder Woman, Superboy, and Bart Allen are all brought back and under Necron's control, who, at this point, is manipulating Batman and vomiting Black Lantern rings. Watching heroes fight against their friends is hard enough, but when readers realize the majority of the core Justice League and Titans just became zombies, this became an instant page-turner, and would surely be difficult for anyone in that situation. Like, yeah, they're zombies, but in a world with zombies and a man who can travel through time and other realities at will, you'd think that there'd be a way to stop them from being zombies. and back to being normal humans and alive, so you wouldn't want to put them down again, but you kinda have to. It's a turmoil for sure. And at 10, Bane Replacement. A deadly new villain also debuted in April 13th, the Joker #2, one who is taking after her daddy. A new villain named Vengeance, the daughter of Bane, the latest in a long line of new characters introduced into the Bat family over the past year. Vengeance was even played up with a secret variant cover slipped into comic book stores' shipments of Joker #2 issues, with one copy of this variant for every 50 copies they ordered of the issue. And while I do question if this is truly Bane's daughter or the girl who goes around claiming to be everyone's daughter, like how she did when she was wearing the Joker's face claiming to be Joker's daughter, her taking over for Bane is certainly an interesting development, considering how Bane is largely considered to be one of Batman's best villains. However, I guess DC made it clear who they prefer, given that again, they kinda Jokerified him as soon as this new universe started. More on that later. And at 9, the death of Bane. In a scene set in Arkham Asylum and Batman's Infinite Frontier #0, we follow a guard named Mahoney as he performs a routine check on Bane, who is incarcerated in the Draconian facility. But things are anything but routine, as Mahoney discovers Bane chained up to the wall, as apparently he's expected to be, and then the room itself full of poison gas and dead guards. As this cop investigates, he discovers that Bane is not the perpetrator of the attack on the guards, but one of the victims. He pulls off Bane's mask to reveal that not only is Bane dead, but he's also been Jokerized by the poison gas, which seems to be a version of the Joker gas. Thanks to this, Arkham goes into lockdown and the events which follow are known as A-Day or Arkham Day. Originally, the perpetrator of this horrific scene was assumed to be the Joker, thanks to the, Jokerified Bane. However, the narrator is later revealed to be the Scarecrow, leading writers to assume that he's the one behind it. But recently, Batman has revealed that he doesn't think Scarecrow is behind it, leading readers to now question who truly caused A-Day. I'm pretty sure it's been revealed, but I don't want to spoil it. And at 8, the Snyder Cut. Zack Snyder's Justice League, often referred to as the Snyder Cut, is the 2021 director's cut of the 2017 Justice League film, the 5th film in the DC Extended Universe, the DCEU, and the sequel to Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, as director Zack Snyder intended it before he had to leave production. The theatrical version of Justice League received mixed reviews and was a box office disappointment, leading Warner Bros. To reevaluate the DCEU's future and led them to focus on developing films around individual characters with less regard for a shared narrative. Many fans expressed interest in an alternate cut more faithful to Snyder's original vision, which they and members of the cast and crew nicknamed the Snyder Cut. Warner Bros. Decided to move ahead with it in February of 2020 after the internet was absolutely berating them, and in May, Snyder announced that the original cut would be released as Zack Snyder's Justice League via HBO Max. It cost around $70 million to complete the visual effects, score, and editing, with new material filmed in October of 2020, with some scenes even reportedly filmed in Zack's backyard after he was told that he couldn't refilm anything. Zack Snyder's Justice League was released on HBO Max in the United States on March 18th, 2021, and became the 4th most streamed film to debut on the platform. It is so much better. I mean, it's 4 hours, but those 4 hours are used well. And at 7, Batman Fear State. This event takes place within the Infinite Frontier era and is a prequel storyline that leads directly into the events of the DC Future State series that was released between January and February of 2021. Fear State derives its name from a paper that was written by Jonathan Crane while attending Gotham University. The paper laid out details on the benefits of fear-ridden society and major catastrophes, and that they eventually lead to inevitable societal and human evolution. The main plot revolves around Scarecrow and Simon Saint, who use each other's resources to attempt to acquire full control of Gotham City through fear. Scarecrow uses Saint for his means on gaining chemicals to make an upgraded and enhanced fear toxin to spread throughout Gotham City that adds an aspect of mind control within its victims, and after creating this toxin, Scarecrow eventually breaks away from Saint and the Magistrate to wreak havoc on the city alone, and turns the citizens of Gotham against the Magistrate, whereas Saint uses Scarecrow and his Fear State ideology to eventually cause a final Gotham crisis, in which the end result is Gotham City surrendering full police and military authoritarian control to the Magistrate, establishing a permanent police state. This event spans 27 issues of various stories, so pretty big. And at 6, Reverse Flashpoint. The Flash Armageddon was a 5-part crossover taking place in the first 5 episodes of The Flash Season 8. However, in episode 4, spoiler alert, it's revealed that Eobard Thawne, who looks like Wells again but is using his real name, created his own version of Flashpoint, where thanks to the new negative still force, instead of killing Barry's mother, he kills Barry as a child as he set out to do so many years ago, or I guess technically Will set out to do. Man, time travel, bro. Anyway, he kills Barry as a child and then takes his place place at CCPD the night the accelerator exploded, resulting in him becoming the Flash, and as this episode takes place, one night away from marrying Iris West. Yeah, so basically, Thawne changed the timeline so that he was actually the Flash. No imitation, no fake outs, no lies, he was truly the Flash in this timeline. And Barry was the reverse Flash, even connected to the negative Speed Force and having the classic red lightning and yellow suit. As Damien Darhk said, that is a work of evil art. Then in the following episode, Thawne ends up asking the team to save his life since now the timeline has finally caught up with him because Barry went back and erased all the anomalies from the timeline using the time stone that Damien had. And Damien Darhk also gets a moment with his daughter that almost made me cry. Although it's unclear if the lightning strike that hits Eobard in this timeline is the original one from 2020 or the one that he made happen in 2013. Halfway through in number 5, Tim Drake comes out. Tim is at least the third of at least 4 men to wear the green and red tights alongside the Caped Crusader of Batman. But with Batman's son taking the mantle in recent years, he has undergone somewhat of an identity crisis. But in the storyline of Sums of Our Parts, he reconnected with an old friend, Bernard Dowd, who last appeared in comics in 2005. When the story starts, Tim's feelings for Bernard seem more than friendly. Seeing him for dinner, Tim thinks it feels like it's been years, but he still looks before the pair hug. First of all, it has been years, Tim, okay? It's been like 16 years to be exact. Perhaps not in the world of DC, but for us it's been ages, so maybe a little backstory before you drool over your bestie, please. Joking aside, Bernard is then kidnapped by the Chaos Monster in the middle of dinner, and Bernard hints during their escape, after Robin saves him, that he knows Tim is Robin, saying that he wishes they could have finished their date. Oh, hold up. Backtrack for a second, okay? What's with the random bombshell in the middle of this escape? Like, how do you know he's Robin? When did you work that out? Can I get like a flashback sequence real quick, please? Either way, this then leads to Bernard asking Tim out again and Tim accepting, in one of the biggest emotional roller coasters in the past year. In comics, not in real life. It's a whole other can of worms. And at 4, John Kent comes out. Man, this is a long way from Pink Kryptonite, isn't it? John Kent, first introduced in Convergent Superman number 2 in 2015, came out as bisexual this year on November 9th in the pages of Superman, Son of Kal-El number 5. This was announced on October 11th, also known as National Coming Out Day, so it may not have been a surprise to readers, but it's certainly a landmark moment, with the character as high profile as Superman shattering previous stereotypes even more. This, along with the August reveal of Tim Drake also coming out as bisexual, is really great to expand representation and not alienate any readers identifying as part of the LGBTQ+ community, and I love that. Other major LGBTQ+ characters include Batwoman, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, and Alan Scott, the first Green Lantern. In this issue, John Kent's Superman finds comfort in Jay's arms after he's totally wrung out from trying to save the world, which according to Jim Lee works out more since, quote, we can have John Kent exploring his identity in the comments, as well as John Kent learning the secrets of his family on TV on Superman and Lois. They coexist in their own worlds and times, and our fans get to enjoy both simultaneously. Getting close to the end in number 3, Dark Knights, Death Metal number 7. And in that issue and the issue before, we see Wonder Woman at her most powerful, in a godlike form that's even more powerful than a god. As the comic puts it, quote, she has been a god before, but at this moment, she's more. At this point, she has ascended past godhood and can see like all of time and all realities. She can see every Earth's timeline, and she faces off against the Batman who laughs in his most powerful form. This fight is so intense that they hit each other through time itself. Batman who laughs punches Diana all the way back to like the Jurassic period. Diana here is charged with anti-crisis energy, a connective force that links all of history and all lives as one story. Then she moves on to become one of the hands that created the multiverse in the first place. And going forward, now there's no walls and greater possibilities. She aids in recreating the multiverse in a story we see in the next issues, and the result is what we'll talk about in a moment. But the issue where the multiverse is remade, yeah, a pretty big moment to say the least. Penultimately, in number 2, Future State. Future State is the direct aftermath of the Death Metal number 7 ending, where Wonder Woman defeats the Batman who laughs and ascends to godhood. This series is comprised of 26 series, all with 1 to 4 issues, where the story is Wonder Woman looking into a possible future for the new universe, or Omniverse as they call it, created by the Hands as well as her after the destruction of the previous multiverse. This was again only a possible future, but allowed the writer some time to get the main continuity sorted thanks to the COVID-19 situation and the cancellation of Generation Zero, which was the planned follow-up to Death death metal. Quote from Jim Lee, "We had a lot of great ideas that we were floating around, and rather than dumping it all in 1 month and then renumbering the line and going for that really short-term spike in sales, we just naturally gravitated to the story ideas and concepts we love and building them into the ongoing mythology in a very organic way," end quote. And this whole event and ordeal received positive reviews overall, which is good to hear, since now all the characters from multiple universes seem to have merged into one, allowing all backstories to be canon while picking and choosing which aspects best fit the stories they're trying to tell, which is pretty damn genius if you ask me, although every version of Darkseid being one, that's freaky. And finally, in at number 1, Infinite Frontier. Infinite Frontier is a relaunch by DC Comics of its entire line of ongoing monthly superhero comic book titles in 2021. It's the follow-up to the 2016 DC Rebirth launch, and the entire event received positive reviews. Infinite Frontier begins after the events of Dark Knight's Death Metal, Generations, and Future State, and the DC multiverse has now expanded into a larger omniverse, where everything is canon and it's still dealing with the repercussions of DC Rebirth. The new multiverse has now 2 opposite worlds that represent the metaverse and sustain the balance. One is the Elseworld and the other is Earth Omega, where Darkseid is imprisoned. The new status quo is that all of DC's history counts when understanding a character's backstory and legacy, and history within the franchise is being emphasized by editorial mandate, with many characters now sharing the same codenames. For example, Stephanie Brown and Cassandra Cain share the title of Batgirl, while Oracle reserves the right to also wear the Batgirl costume from time to time, etc. After the recreation of the Infinite Multiverse and a look into the possible future of her universe, Wonder Woman, who has ascended after the defeat of the Batman Who Laughs, is offered a role by the Quintessence in return for saving the multiverse. However, she does not accept it, but this is still the current continuity and main DC universe for now, which makes that a pretty big deal.